Europe faces a complex array of challenges, including economic disparities among member states, radical demographic shifts, and voiced urgency for greater integration in defense and technology sectors. Security concerns have intensified, prompting calls for stronger transnational cooperation and investment in European defense capabilities. Internally, the decline of the radical left, pressures related to Islamic migration, and debates over sovereignty continue to test the unity and functionality of the European Union. Good evening, I'm Jonathan Hessen, and this is the 26th edition of TV7 Europa Stands. Joining us to dissect Europe's state of internal and foreign affairs include Dr. Rafael Bardaji, formerly Spain's National Security Advisor and currently CEO of Worldwide Strategy.
A pleasure.
Pleasure to have you. Dr. Pierre Lellouche, formerly a French Deputy Minister for European Affairs and Minister for Foreign Trade.
That's correct.
It's a pleasure to have you as well, sir.
Merci.
And last but not least, Mr. Timo Soini, the Foreign Minister, formerly of our host country here in Finland, as well as Deputy Prime Minister. It's a pleasure to have you as well.
Thank you for having me.
And Dr. Bardaji, we'll start with you. What can we identify as the core challenge from your perspective within the European context of this past month?
Well, I think it's very simple. What we are seeing basically is that the wall that America made 7 decades ago is being unmade, partly by American administration, but partly by the challengers like Russia, China, and Iran, and other rogue nations, including North Korea. I'm not judging, I'm saying that what's happening. But in Europe, I think what we are suffering is from a frenzy of hysteria against President Trump. We are not reacting, but overreacting to everything. And we are putting together and advancing a narrative which to me is unsustainable, that we are being able to defend ourselves in the short term, that we are going to stay with Ukraine until the last drop of blood of Ukrainian people, not ours, obviously, that we are confronting Russia, who never had the means and the willingness. At the time, the world is moving forward. No? We have Iran now back to the chess player and to the talks about the nuclear program, not the missiles, not the proxy groups in the Middle East. We have China, which is the real challenger probably against the order we have been living in the last 75 years. But my concern as a European is that we are probably acting in the wrong direction. We are deepening the divide between America and Europe, and we are just celebrating what the European Union only knows to do, which is to spend money. All these 800 billions in defense, let's see what produces. But I'm not sure that we will be in a better off position, strategically speaking, after the years of expenditures again. No?
Dr. Lellouche?
Well, I think this is an unprecedented moment of history and probably a turning point for the future of the EU itself. We are confronting several problems. One is a departure of the US and a return of the US to what it was not before 1945, not even before 1914. We are seeing the re-emergence of the 19th century kind of US, nationalist, protectionist, isolationist, and imperialist, and not interested in us here in Europe anymore. So it's a massive change because it is the US that provided the foundation on which the EU is built. If you take out the carpet, if you take out the foundation of the EU in terms of security, I have doubts, and this is kind of stuff I put in my book. I have doubts as to the ability of the EU to sustain itself. That's the number one problem, come from the West. Problem number two, come from the East and Russia. We need to end this war quickly and find a way to stabilize, and it's going to be extremely difficult, Ukraine after the war. We are going to have in front of us a destroyed country, highly unstable politically, over-militarized, with huge problem of corruption, And the US are essentially telling us, we take the rare earths and the material, you handle the reconstruction of Ukraine. So you're talking here about 800 billion euros. Third problem we have is to make sure we deter Russia. So we have to relaunch something we have destroyed over the last 30 years, an army. We've done 30 years of unilateral disarmament. So we have to start again. It's difficult. We start, factories, find the people, find the equipment. It's going to be difficult. And there is no money. Contrary to what Rafael just said, there is no money from the EU. So each national state will have to find the money. The Germans have the money. The Poles got so much money from Brussels that they can actually rearm. So those two will rearm. It's difficult for the French. It's going to be extremely difficult. The British as well. So question mark on our ability to defend the continent. Third big issue is trade. And, are we just going to be a battlefield for the competition between the US and China? Or are we able, at some point, to catch up again? But for the moment, we have missed the fourth industrial revolution with technology. So we have a big problem there as well. And finally, and perhaps more fundamentally, we have a problem with immigration and Islam. The demographics are going to be the key of the next few decades. And we have a huge problem there because you cannot, people are not interchangeable. You cannot take people and then imagine that they don't come with their culture, with their religion, with their habits. This was the illusion that many countries had, especially here in Finland or in Scandinavia, when they imported, out of generosity, a lot of refugees, only to find that this is a very different culture. And that religion really is on the move now, contrary to Christian religion, which is in the process of dying in Europe. It's very interesting because we are now living with the death of the Pope, again a turning point. Is the church going to be interested again in Europe, or is it just going to wash its hands and see the de-Christianization of Europe and consider that it's lost and focus on Asia or Africa? So you see, there's a galaxy here of tremendous problem. What's left of US, Russia, defense, technology, immigration. These are the 5 components that, it seems to me, will determine the future of our continent. And they are all extremely difficult to fix, with a political class in Europe, which I'm sorry to say, is extremely poor and disappointing. Notably in my country, but it's true also in England. It's difficult in Germany, in Spain. Only Madame Meloni looks good in this picture, but it's a problem. It's a problem.
Yeah, it was it was a bunch of good news by the colleagues, and so to say that if I started to watch roughly 20 years back, we started the bailout policies, and we bailed out first the banks and the Greeks, and then we bailed out Corona. We put the money in a big way, spent in a big way, didn't see the results. Now we are going to have the same kind of system with defense, as you very rightly put, but with what kind of money? And we did a right thing in Finland for decades because we have still conscription army, which is compulsory, and it is cost-effect system. Every man can use the machine rifle and put the landmine. That is one of the biggest issues what is now taking place in Finland, the Ottawa Agreement about landmines. It will be lifted in Baltic countries, in Poland, and also in Finland. And it was a political issue. We are the world, we are the children, kumbaya stuff, decreasing always the defense and no worries. And if it will be a worry, US is going to bail us out. This bailout, not taking responsibility of ourselves. What I'm really concerned is the tariffs, that if we will form the real economical giant, it would be the America and Europe jointly, 1 billion people. And if we are fighting with each other, the only one who is going to benefit from this is China, more or less. And then we have the problems of immigration. We have been a little bit more modest in Finland compared to Sweden, which is in the bad shape. The criminal gangs who are actually having a certain kind of areas with no police presence there as well. And I heard from you that there are attacks to the jails in France and so forth to threaten the wardens. And one thing which I want to be modestly positive, but I don't know. We should find our Judeo-Christian base again, because that is the core issue of the whole Europe. And if we are getting that away, it's not going to be empty. It will be filled with other challenges, Islam and other stuff. That is more or less what is going to happen.
Very optimistic indeed.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. And we'll try and dive now deeper into the various challenges at hand and see how we can tackle them. And
it's not a question of optimism and pessimism. The job is to look at the reality and
absolutely.
The problem in front of us are just of huge magnitude. There's a turning point historically.
Yep.
And the question is whether our countries are still able to produce the kind of leadership you need. Now, in peacetime, democracies are usually not very good at producing leadership. The best guys go into private sectors, they don't go in politics. The De Gaulle and the Churchill don't happen in peacetime. They happen in... so there is hope that, this is a very old continent. We've been through a long story. France has been around for 1,000 years. We've had all kinds of problems with the Brits, the Germans, the Spaniards. We survive all this. So there's still, it seems to me, a possibility of rebound if we do find, again, the roots of our civilization and the will to defend it. And that, it seems to me, if you look at the young people, some sign of hope there.
I do have hope, but nonetheless, the challenges at hand are very significant. And Dr. Bardaji, when we're talking about those various complexities, the first thing that comes to mind is leadership. A lack thereof is an understatement. We're looking at the French leader, Macron, basically losing all power and being an empty vessel when we're talking about what, frankly, he possesses, when we're talking about the actual power of that seat. We're talking about Germany that is in the process of creating a government but not there yet. We're talking about secondary powers in and throughout Europe, which, quite frankly, are subject to EU control on all levels, with a European institution that is trigger-happy when it comes to spending on foreign actors that are nothing to do with continental Europe, with the latest being 7.4 billion just to Egypt, another couple of billion to Algiers, to Libya. We're talking now about the reconstruction, supposedly, of Syria, another €1 billion pledged to Turkey to help them with their refugee problem. But when it comes down to the coffers of EU member states, everybody is telling me they're broke.
Yeah, well, I think it's not casual that we have weak leaders everywhere in Europe, actually. Because of that, I think we need to go deeper and find not just a personality characteristic by themselves, but something else. And I would say, I mean, it's a risky proposition, but I would say that our cherished liberal democracy that we knew in the past, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, political parties, fair election, everything, has moved into something, has morphed into something that we can call progressive democracy. And we have been instilling in the population detachment from the institutions. We are finding legitimacy in international bodies instead of in our sovereign nation. We have been given powers to the European Union, and we have been creating a new generation which is probably totally ignorant of our own history, our values, and is built on self-deprecating of our culture. And that is probably the main challenge and how to battle that. I don't know. I don't have the solution, but I think we need to focus on how to move from this self-destroying culture that has been indoctrinated into our young people to some extent and in the society at large, and moving back to the basics of what has been our civilization.
Dr. Lellouche?
There's a lot of truth in what Rafael Bardaji just said. The founders of the EU, who, by the way, were very close to the CIA and to the Americans after the war. It was an American operation, the EU. It was nothing else than, trying to contain the Russians. So the US were all in favor of European integration as long as they controlled it. And so the founding fathers were, what they wanted, and they said it, was to eradicate the poison of nationalism. They wanted to invent something post-national, as they said.
Was chief focus on the French and Germans in this?
The reconciliation was the key to start this. But the project was post-national. You constructed a structure which gradually, from economics to currency to politics, would end up being some kind of a supranational body, open to trade, with a philosophy of open borders. That's why, for example, we are totally open to the rest of the world, including Chinese investment in Europe. They play like with us like fiddle, and at the same time you empty the value. For example, when we so-called wrote the Constitution of Europe, it was President Chirac who didn't want to include a reference to the Judeo-Christian history. So it was Europe as peace, a sort of big NGO, well-meaning NGO with money that you distribute to those who need money. You enlarge, because each time there is a problem in Europe, they do a commission and then they enlarge. And so you have people coming to the capital and check their boxes. And if you do well, at the end of the boxes, you enter the integration process. And Madame von der Leyen has one goal, which is to go to 40 countries. And you and I, we've been sitting in those Brussels meetings. Yes. It simply doesn't work.
Yeah.
It simply doesn't work. When you have a table that is as long as a basketball field and you don't see your colleague, and each guy has 2 minutes to expose his national position, there is no national position. So the consensus is produced by technocrats. And technocrats, well-meaning technocrats, because they're talking about the common good. The problem is, when you start negotiation, for example, on Mercosur or with the Chinese, who is the common good? German car, French agriculture, or luxury goods, or finished products?
Yeah.
Very hard. So I think this organization is not working properly. It is not giving the European a sense of self-responsibility, and it's going to be severely shaken as a result of the pressures that I've discussed earlier, US, Chinese, and so on and so forth.
Mr. Soini?
Yeah, I think there is a big increasing gap within US and Europe. If we start about European leaders, when the problem arises, the answer is also more Europe. What happens then? It's more Europe, more green renewables, more woke, and more LGBT. If we talk about Trump and administration, not about institution, not United Nations, not European Union, not the WTO, not the World Bank, not that kind of stuff. There is a contradiction in that big way. Green renewables, drill, baby, drill. So that is another one. And now what is taking place in US, it has been bathing with woke stuff in universities and media and everywhere else. Now what is happening in the USA, they're going the other way. So that gap is widening all the time. And I think in some extent, the trousers will be worn out.
But you know, there is one point in common, though. It is a revolt from the people.
From the area, like it was in France, with the sleeves, yellow sleeves,
yes.
And this is backlash from the remote areas in the Midwest and everything else.
If you read the book of J.D. Vance, Hillbilly Elegy, is very much what you have in many regions in France or in Belgium.
And also UK.
The poor whites are the losers of globalization.
So why, Dr. Bardaji, is the effect that was so successful in the United States with the reemergence of the Trump administration and the integration, of course, of many libertarians within that context from their perspective via J.D. Vance, not as successful throughout continental Europe and Great Britain at that?
Well, I think there is a main difference, no? Basically, in Europe, we had an European Union that had to be interfering in domestic national politics since they removed the government in Greece, then in Italy for a technocrat, then now you have seen the candidates in Romania. They don't stop to allow non-establishment forces to grow. That's the problem with our democratic system in Europe and the European Union. They are preserving their turf. And in America, it has been different. Against all odds, Trump and the MAGA movement has been able to force the institutions, companies, and even the press and the media to change side. I mean, I'm surprised that a character like Mark Zuckerberg, who was, feeding the Democrats with millions and millions, suddenly change the jacket with no problem at all and go to the White House to take a picture with Donald Trump. So it's slightly different, the culture and the system and the procedures in America than in Europe. And here, the establishment probably is still too strong, unable to stop the revolting forces. No?
I will soon ask you, Dr. Lellouche, with regard to Marine Le Pen, because I think that's also one of those questions that many of our viewers would like to better understand. But first, Mr. Soini, one of the characters that the European Union is now evolving into is anti-Christian sentiments.
It is indeed, yeah. And it was, if we very carefully listened what J.D. Vance was saying, the message was that you were based to Judeo-Christian values, but you are ending up to prosecute the Christians who are praying outside the clinics and you are reducing their say in a completely bad way. And this is unbearable. And then in Europe, we are having an anti-Christian crusade by the people who are in power and especially media and so forth. And it went thus far that it's about sex or gender. This was a big decision made by UK highest authority that there are biologically there is a male and a female. How come that was read in the Bible in the Moses book or in the start of the systems? And there are real problems if the 10-year-old boy is afraid to going to sleep when he thinks that he can wake up as a girl. And this is the kind of confuse what is produced through these madnesses. And this is something that people are not saying aloud. And we have a court case ongoing here in Finland. The 6th year, it's now in the highest court, where the former Minister of Interior Affairs, grandmother of many times and 30 years in the parliament, carrier Christian Democrat Päivi Räsänen, was quoting the letter to the Romans written by St. Paul. And she has been in the court process for 6 years. And when I was still in the politics, it was the whole process started. And I said, if St. Paul should come to the Helsinki airport, he wouldn't be brought into St. Paul's Cathedral here. He would go to the police of Pasila to get interrogated or investigated. This is madness.
This madness does not stop there, of course. We are seeing the radical left, which is in decline in light of those various developments throughout Europe, merging into an unholy matrimony, if I may call it that, with Islamists, with Salafists, with other type of radical Islam. Your country, France, is unfortunately one of the most severely impacted by this phenomena. What can you tell us on that?
Well, first of all, the left is a big loser of the last 30 or 40 years of history, because everything they stood for, communism, Soviet Union, communist parties, collapsed. So they have to reinvent themselves and find some cause. They've lost the proletariat. Proletariat now is a loser of globalization, and they don't go for them, they go for the extreme right.
But they took over the commission, which pretty much controls everything.
Who?
The left or left
Well,
of
it's
center.
not even the left, it's a mixture of center, it's unqualified. No, the left is essentially in search of a new people, and the new people are the migrants and the Muslims. So the Islamo-leftist union is now made, at least it's very clear in France. You have now, and on top of that, anti-Semitism is now used openly in the name of anti-racism.
Yeah.
In the name of fighting the Zionists in Israel, in the name of the good. So you can be an open anti-Semite and a very good man because you are fighting for the right of the Gazawi or the Palestinian and so on. So the debate has shifted completely. J.D. Vance, in his Munich speech, shocked the intelligentsia, the generals, the diplomats, and so on. But what did he say? He said, be careful, you are in the process of losing some of your liberties. I work for a TV channel called CNews in France, which is considered right-wing. We consider it as objective because we talk about the issues that nobody else talks about. Immigration, violence, the kind of issue. France is a country where the government actually killed one TV channel a few months ago, which was a sister channel of the channel of CNews where I work. And so it was canceled. I just recently wrote a book on the war in Ukraine, which is an objective book. It is not pro-Russian or pro-whatever. It says, here are the roots of the issue. It's called engrenage, it's it's a spiral, how we go from one stupid thing to the next, and we now have 1 million people killed and wounded for something that could have been prevented. This book is banned on all public media in France. And if you look at my own name in the social network, you will see that I'm now banned from the social network because I don't think like Mr. Macron, and therefore I should not be listened to. And that's a system in which we operate. It's highly polarized. We now have in France a minister of artificial intelligence and technology who actually said that she has the means to stop fake news. And must be considered as a fake news because I don't agree with her, so therefore you disappear. If you enter in this kind of dynamic, it's extremely serious. Because these people are destroying, in the name of what they consider superior principle, their principle being naturally superior, they're destroying the basis of our democracy.
We see it also on platforms like YouTube, for instance, where TV7 for years upon years was on average of between 300 and 400,000 viewers, households. And the moment we started speaking about Islamism and we started speaking about Qatari involvements in the Qatargate and all those things, it plummeted down to only merely several tens of thousands. And it was very apparent. So
same happened to me in the last few weeks.
You see all those matters, but it's not only there. Dr. Bardaji, naturally, we're seeing also the latest book by Douglas Murray coming out, now being banned in Germany, where he cannot speak about those extremist cults namely Islamism and other radical Marxist groups, because Germany sees that as a threat.
Yeah, well, it's this irony, no, that the people are applying cancelling policies or anti-hate speech from the haters themselves. So it's a kind of paradox, no. But that's my concern. Our democracy is no longer what it used to be. It's now dominated by, and because they come through technologies, by censorship basically, and exclusion and dividing the society. If you don't agree with the main ideas, you're out. You're banned, you're shadow banned, or you are expelled.
The French president, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Macron is talking about a progressist world, that's him, that's the EU, that's the Commission, that's all his colleagues, against an international reactionary. So the Europeans have now found two devils. They used to have Putin, now they have Trump, so they have two devils. And only they, the progressist Europeans, have the truth. So they are now in the process of suppressing any other voice. And again, they can close a TV channel in a democracy.
It's like what Mr. Soini mentioned about Päivi Räsänen,
that's
former Minister of Interior.
The political question is, can we win using their new mechanism? Or we are totally in an obsolete game attached to our democratic liberal values in the past? Because what we have in front of us is a different class, it's a different game, it's something different.
Well, that's the point, because if she loses in the Supreme Court, what's to say that they won't start banning the Bible? Because all she did was quote the Bible. And that is something that naturally this will break the back of the camel, we say in the Middle East. Because ultimately Christians will not just stand idly by in such circumstances. But nonetheless, this is a reality that can actually happen. And that it's not something that we can just stand idly by and allow to happen while they're promoting, of course, the Quran and other books that call for the eradication of Christians and Jews, which is another story altogether. But let's take it up a notch. When we're talking about clash of civilization in the Middle East, we're seeing that demographics are shifting radically, but nonetheless, the European institution and various EU member states understand that if they do not tackle the mass migration, and we're talking here about illegal migration, this will ultimately topple the various institutions we live in. Dr. Bardaji, how can we deal with that at a time when we're seeing the trends?
Well, as Pierre Lellouche said, there is a kind of left Islamist alliance now. For instance, in Spain, where I live, it is clear that the open border policy of the government, bringing more people from North Africa or Africa, is basically oriented to give them new voters and stay in power forever. Is what the Democrats try to do in America as well. No? So there are some governments that don't perceive that a growing Islamist or Islam majority in the country will bring them down. On the contrary, they give them nationality, they give them subsidies, they can whatever they want, and they vote for them. So that's the new strategy, at least in Spain, and from the Spanish government perspective. How do you break that? Okay, you need to go back and see the economic cost of illegal immigrations, the cost of social friction between the illegal immigrants that are taking a lot of resources from public expenditures compared to the nationals. But it's a slow process, no? And particularly you need the media, you need some allies accompany you in that narrative, no? That they are not there.
Dr. Lellouche?
Let me talk a minute about what's going on in my own country, because it is unfortunately probably the worst case in Europe. We are taking in 500,000 migrants a year. 90% of them come from North and Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. More and more from Sub-Saharan Africa. So the poorest country of the Sahel in particular. 500,000 people. 300,000 have legal documents, permits. Out of these 300,000, you have 90% of marriage, intermarriage, so you can go to the bled, as they say, and bring back your wife. Doesn't know one word of French. Usually don't work. And live on and become French automatically when she marries a migrant that is already French. We have 90,000 of students who never return to Africa. So these are 300,000 legal. Then we have 150,000 asylum seekers. And the convention, the European Convention of Human Rights and so on, was based in the 1950s on the emergence of a Stalin Eastern Bloc. It was not made for mass immigration. Now they are using the asylum principle for a major route for illegal immigration, because these people stay. And then we have the clandestine. So it's a minimum 500,000 a year. We in France, of course, in France there is no ethnic statistics, no religious statistic, but the estimate is that about 1/3 of the population now has some immigrant origin. 40% of the children between 0 and 4 years, 40% are coming from North Africa and Sahel, which is the fact that they are, in fact, Muslims. So the changes of the people in France is enormous, and you don't have the right to say. You don't have the right to call a spade a spade. Let me give you now a final example. I don't want to be too long, but I could speak about this for 4 hours. Recently, we are now in the middle of a major clash with Algeria, French and Algerian government. About 2 months ago, a poor man was killed in the eastern part of France by an Algerian national, a clandestine migrant without papers, who had been there for 3 years, been arrested several times by the police. The French authorities had convicted him, and they went to the Algerian consulate 14 times to obtain a document of readmission into Algeria. The Algerian government refused 14 times to take this guy back. And this guy actually killed a French national in France. So Algeria is actually responsible for the death of a French national in France. Okay? Now, this created a stir, the tension and so on. After 2 months of tension, what do you think happened? Absolutely nothing. We continue to give 250,000 permits to Algerian nationals. All the elite of the so-called government of Algeria, which is composed of military and spies, it's a security military regime. These guys have diplomatic passport, which allows them to come, make their shopping in France, use their apartment that they bought because of all the money, of course, the gas and oil is used like that, and be treated free of charge in French hospitals. This is the situation. And do you think we managed to change it? No, we don't manage to change it.
Naturally, it's also not very sustainable. Mr. Soini, in Finland, the situation is slightly better.
It is slightly better.
But it's not in a good trend.
It's not a good trend, and the big event or big troubles were 2015, 2016, when it was a landslide of immigrants coming to Europe. And Mrs. Merkel said that we are going to open our arms. And 1 million came. And we know that where to they came. Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, France, Scandinavian countries. And then we noticed that, there is a problem. What was then the medicine and what was the cure? So we are going to pay to Turkey and Libya and Egypt in order to keep them not coming with the boats and so forth. And this is outrageous also in that sense that if a person gets here, he can apply, he can complain, he can go first to the district court, then to the highest court.
Exactly.
And if he is deported back, there is a bunch of human rights lawyers and all kind of systems that you cannot put him back because he's in life danger. And if you are in life danger, you cannot be deported. So what is then the pattern and the model given that actually if you get in, you are never going to get out? And we have
and you know why we have similar problem? Because we're all tied with this Convention of Human Rights. Which makes it impossible for a government to actually control his immigration policy. If tomorrow you or I are interior minister in France or in Finland, you don't control your borders because the control is made by directive decided by the Commission.
And this is one of the big things that the results of the elections are cancelled in a way by judges. And that is the problem, because what democracy is, people are going to the polls, they vote freely, and then that is the result, and then the elected people make the decisions. But now the unelected people, like bureaucrats and then the judges, are in a way making the kind of court cases which are going to tie the political powers, people who are elected by the people, they are tied with the legal entities that in order that there is no change coming. And this has produced, of course, extreme right or nationalistic or whatever. But now if people are losing their faith to the vote, it goes the other way. The poll, people, 50% out of people are going to the polls. We had local elections. In here, just next to capital, is a city called Vantaa, which the main airport lies. 47 points out of the people went to the polls.
That's right.
And what kind of democracy that is still? And if we have then this no strength and no aspiration to really say that, okay, I'm elected, I know that just for 4 years, but now power is here. If I'm not going to use it, of course the establishment and the judges and the media will use it instead of democratic process.
So, Dr. Bardaji, what can be done? Because, quite frankly, you look at the situation that happened with Marine Le Pen. You see the situation with Geert Wilders, who won vast numbers, but wasn't able to establish a coalition. You look at Germany, that even though CDU did win, it doesn't even want to consider collaboration with AfD because they're considered taboo. And every time you're seeing the so-called far right, even though I don't think they are considered far right in historic terms, they are immediately outcasts, and the entire establishment, from the media all the way to the reigning politicians, will do everything in their power to suppress those opinions that are basically promoting sovereignty and self-determination and all those different fundamental principles that are promoted in every so-called institution fighting those same principles.
Yeah, well, I think it's very clear. You know, the problem is that electoral promises are made on the basis that are going to be broken. In Germany, it's very clear. I mean, the platform from the Conservatives were shifted overnight despite the people voting in favor of that particular platform. But we have to go even further back. I remember the French people rejecting the European constitutions. And what happened?
Yeah.
They were forced to vote again until the result the European Union wanted. No? So it has been with us for a while.
No? They did not vote of it. They went through Parliament the second time.
Yeah, and the Netherlands.
The Netherlands.
Yeah, and then the Irish had to vote again.
Yeah.
But three
countries
rejected, three referendums, wrong results, vote again or do again.
Okay, or do again.
Or cry again and do again.
That's my problem. How can we revert that situation playing with their cards? It's a tricky situation.
This is a poison of this European integration, because at the end of the day, people are realizing that their government, exactly what you said, do not deliver on what they said they would do.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's a sham. And those, they don't go to vote anymore.
Yeah.
Or they vote to the extreme. believing that only a revolution can change that.
Yeah.
So there is an enormous amount of frustration and anger in all of our countries. In fact,
Yeah.
it's not only French or
Yeah.
Italian, but
Everywhere.
it's like a cocotte minute, a kettle that's boiling.
But I assume this is not sustainable.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Yeah.
You know.
Oh, it is.
Again,
It is. Well,
It
let's hear how sustainable it is.
Why has been contained the population disenchantment at the Frenchmen with the European Union? Because they have been removing all economic constraints, deficits. Well, you can spend whatever you want, the governments,
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So the people are, living somehow. And why should they revolt against the European Union that are feeding them to some extent? Politics, bureaucrats are there in Brussels, we don't know them. There is a limit, but up to now, the limit has been moving far away from us. In that sense, I think they still have some tools to rule the people for a while. No?
I want to say one thing which is completely differs us from Sweden, which is not spoken and which is a kind of the thing that shouldn't be said aloud, and it's currency. Sweden has a currency of its own, Swedish krona. We are part of the Eurozone with Greeks, Spain, France, Germany, and us. And where is the flexibility? Everybody can understand the rate of the euro is not decided by the courtesy of the Finnish taxpayer. We are just told that this is it, and Sweden is floating its currency and winning big way. But if you say this, you are not a proper European.
Yeah.
Yeah, the currency issue, of course, works as long as Germany pays.
Yeah,
The day Germany.
With what money, though?
yeah.
Well, they have a lot of money. They had a lot of. They had a lot of.
They have a lot of
surplus.
public money,
Well,
but they still owe, or they're still owed, supposedly, by Italy. They're still owed by Greece. They're still owed by Spain. Is that money ever coming back?
Probably never.
No.
But the reserves, what I'm saying is that the whole Eurozone is actually based on the D-mark. There was a deal during the war in Yugoslavia. It was a deal between Mitterrand and Kohl at the time to move to the euro based on the German sort of giving the Deutschmark, but they also gave the rules, which is no deficit. The problem is that France today has the highest deficit in Europe. So there is a moment in which a German will tell us, sorry, we don't pay anymore.
And what are the consequences
And
thereof?
the consequences will be a tremendous crisis. But I just want to remember that after the war, when de Gaulle came back in power in France, and God knows we were in a terrible situation with the war and Algeria and Indochina and so on, he used two instruments. One was customs, exactly like Trump. Protect your industries that you are creating, you protect it. And second was the currency, the possibility of devaluation. Today, we do not have those instruments anymore. Customs are federalized in Europe. If you are a foreign trade minister, you have a minister on top of you. The decision on foreign trade are done by the EU only. The states don't say anything, okay? The money, same thing. The currency is run by a European Central Bank, which, of course, is tied to the German economy.
And therefore, unless the European Union is fundamentally reformed or collapses, which will have its own consequences, we're going to see this going from bad to worse.
We'll
That's my
probably
point.
see
And
the
then-
Palestinian Authority be reformed before the European Union is reformed. I'm afraid.
C'est amusant. It's amusing. Another point being, of course, the question of migrations.
Yeah.
When Schengen was invented in Europe, 1985, before the wall came down, it was West Europe, and it was convenient to drive from one country to the next without showing your ID. But it was a different world. Today, Schengen in a period of massive immigration is madness.
Yeah.
Because people enter and then they move around freely. So So criminals also do that very well.
Yeah.
So you cannot continue with a system like that. If we do not get control of our borders, we're going to be swamped.
So we have 7 minutes roughly before the end of today's edition, and I would like to give each of you the opportunity to touch on 3 fundamental issues that we still have to touch on. Keep it short, because we do not have time to go deeply into those topics. First thing is the United States is currently negotiating with the Islamic Republic of Iran, potentially to reach some type of JCPOA plus, or hopefully not that, but a repackaged arrangement that will end Iran's nuclear proliferation, a threat not only to Middle Eastern countries, including the State of Israel, but European countries as well. On that, Dr. Bardaji, 1 minute.
Well, I think there are some people who believe that the nuclear program in Iran is like the queen in the chess, and the regime is the king, and the Ayatollahs and Khamenei is willing to protect the king, the regime, giving away the nuclear program. I think this is fundamentally wrong. They don't understand what happened in the past in the negotiations. I think that all negotiation has preserved the technicalities and the advancement of the nuclear program, and no negotiation is going to stop that, unfortunately. Only through pressure is the way that Iran will behave somehow. No? And if everything fails, the only one option, which is the military kinetic action. But still there are some time to explore possibilities. I think President Trump has taken the only course of action, which is, okay, let's force the Iranians to talk and see what happens. But they must be clear from the very beginning that all options, as usually said, are on the table. If not, we are losing the game.
Dr. Bardaji wrote a brilliant article on this very topic, also with that analogy, at Hoover Institutions at Stanford University.
Correct.
Highly recommended. You look that up. Dr. Lellouche?
It's very simple. It's a life insurance of the regime, the nuclear weapon. And they are not going to give it up. Article 1. Article 2, only a change of government and a change of policy can stop proliferation. It happened in Sweden, because Sweden at some point in the 50s had a nuclear weapons program. They stopped it. It happened in South Africa. Political change, they stopped it, and it happened in Argentina. I do not know of other cases in which you get, unless you destroy it militarily. The Israelis destroyed a reactor in Iraq that was built by France. The Iranian bombed also Iraqi facilities, the same way we bombed German facilities in Peenemünde during World War II. So either you have a change of regime or war.
With that being said...
And that don't see the change of regime will come from the Iranian people.
With that being said, even after Operation Opera of 1982 against the Osirak reactor, they found out later that the Iraqis just went a different path towards nuclear proliferation of a nuclear warhead or nuclear payload, something that was only unveiled after the invasion of Iraq by the United States, something that also we should take note of.
Let me say 1 second, I think. And Pierre, in his book, make a clear picture of the Ukrainian impact on the non-proliferation treaty and the proliferation at large. No? I highly recommend it.
Yeah, so one word on this. It is clear that the war will start a huge movement of proliferation, because Ukrainians were, as you know, when they became independent, they had 5,000 nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
We denuclearized. The Russians and the US and the European, we actually signed a piece of paper saying, you denuclearize, but we will protect you. That lesson has been learned. So everywhere people are preparing, in Turkey, in Saudi Arabia, in the Emirates, also in Korea, in Japan.
In Germany?
And probably Germany, Poland,
They already had a discussion
and
of that.
Ukraine, and Ukraine itself.
Yeah, that is very essential, what you said about in Ukraine, and they were betrayed collectively, big way. And I think it's only one thing which is fighting between the political issues all around. Which one is have more strength is it economy or ideology? And we are playing usually the economic card and forgetting the ideology. There are a good bunch of people who still think that ideology is over economy. We are the new Marxists in the West who think that it is economy which beats the ideology. It's the vice versa.
Absolutely. Well, in a closing sentence from each, where are we heading from this? I will note myself, I do not think that the United States will disengage from Europe, as many tend to think. I think that the United States has laid out a certain chart for possible collaboration and integration into the transatlantic alliance in a matter of equal share, something that will ultimately serve as a foundation for years to come. Really, in one sentence, Dr. Bardaji, we'll start with you.
I think we need to calm down a little bit. There are too much anxiety on the table now, and we are overreacting to things that probably in a few months we'll have a clear picture in relation to America.
Dr. Lellouche?
I think you're wrong. I think
no, you do.
I think the U.S. are moving out. They are beginning to move out. They will probably keep some kind of relationship, but nowhere near the previous system. They're back home now.
Mr. Soini?
I hope that we can keep them in the boat.
Well,
go to church.
Yeah.
Light a candle.
Light a candle, go to church, light a candle. That always helps.
Always.
yeah. Well, Mr. Timo Soini, Finland's former foreign minister and deputy prime minister.
And a great believer.
Yeah, great believer, thank you.
Pierre Lellouche, former French deputy minister of Europe. And,
equally a believer.
Minister for foreign trade. And last but not least, Dr. Rafael Bardaji, Spain's former national security advisor and CEO of Worldwide Strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For all of your valuable
Thank you.
insights. I'd like also to thank all of you at home as well. This has been Europa Stands here at TV7's headquarters in Helsinki, Finland. Until our next edition, wishing you a good evening. For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.